I'm making an obby from scratch on Hytopia and showing you every step of the process along the way, from before the first line of code is ever written all the way through to the final published game. If you don't know me, my name is Ash, and in this third video of our 5-part tutorial series, we are making our game map. We will be using the Hytopia builder to build and export our map, and then we will be integrating our map into our game's code. Now, you don't have to be up to date with the first 2 videos of this tutorial series for this video to make sense to you, but if you are, that means you have already got all of your core functionality coded in your game, and now it's time to make it look good. So with all of that said, let's continue making an obby on Hytopia. So since today is all about making a map, I thought it would be good if we took a look really fast at what a Hytopia map file actually looks like. So if you go to the assets folder in your project, you should see a file called map.json. This is the default map file that's used when you first initialize a Hytopia project. And you can see in our index.ts file, it says import world map from .assets/map.json. So this is the map file that we have in our project right now. So I'm going to open that up. And you can see right at the top, we have a block registry. So this is a list of all of the block types in our map. And each block has an ID, a name, and a texture URI. The texture URI is the file path of the block texture, and it's relative to the assets folder. So this file is an assets/blocks/bricks.png. So we can go to assets, blocks, and we can find that bricks.png texture, and you can see it there. And this brick is an example of a texture for a block that is the same on all 6 sides. But for some blocks, you might not want them to be the same on all 6 sides. For example, the Hytopia grass block has a different texture for each of the sides of the block, right? So how do we handle that? If we go back to the map file, we can see that our ID number 7 is grass. And you can see that the texture URI is just blocks/grass. There's no file extension at the end, like no .png, right? So this is actually just referencing a folder named grass. So if we go into that grass folder, so we've got assets, blocks, grass. If we open this up, we can see that there are actually 6 files in this folder. And each of these texture files represents one of the sides of the block. So we've got the +y, which is the top of the block. You can see the grass there. We have the -y, which is the bottom of the block. And then we've got the plus and minus, X's and Z's are the sides of the block. So just keep that in mind. Your texture URI can either be a file path or a path to a folder that contains those 6 texture files that are labeled -x, +x, -y, +y, etc. All right, scrolling on down, after the block registry, we have a list of all of our blocks in this blocks section. So these are block coordinates and block type. So we've got the X, Y, Z, block type. So you can see this number 7, again, is that grass block here. So all of these blocks with the 7, those are the location of the grass blocks in the file. So let's open up our map really fast. So let's say we wanted our ground to be stone instead of grass. There's 2 ways we could do it. We could change all these number 7s to a 19 to reference the stone that we have registered up here. Or we can change the texture URI for what's currently grass to be something different. So if I changed this to say stone.png and I hit save, our server's going to reload, and you can see now all of the ground is stone instead of grass. So I'm going to put that back to say grass, and I'm not going to have a PNG at the end because we're going to reference the folder and not a file. And if I hit save, we'll load back in and we can see the grass again. So that's just a quick overview of what a map file looks like. In addition to having the block types and the blocks, if you add models through the Hytopia builder, you'll also have a section for those models in this file as well, which we will look at when we do that later. All right, now it's time to build our map, and you've probably realized by now that I'm a planner. I like to have a plan before I do anything, and this is no different. So for planning your map file, you could do this on paper, you could do this in Microsoft Paint or something. I've done mine on my iPad and just sketched out a quick layout for our volcano dash map. And in my layout, you can see that on the right-hand side, I have a area for a lava chamber. I'm thinking that'll be inset into the side of a volcano a little bit. I've got some purple statues outside. I've got a courtyard with pillars, cracked lava stone, and then I have an entrance to the obby that is over this giant lava lake. So that's my rough plan. It's not pretty, but it gives me a framework to work with while I am building. Okay, and with that done, let's head over to the Hytopia World Builder. So you're gonna wanna go to build.hytopia.com. And when you load in for the first time, you'll just have this huge blank grid that you'll use to start building your map. And before we start building anything, let's just take a minute to talk about the controls. So right click is gonna be your camera. The middle scroll wheel is going to zoom in and out. If you click your scroll wheel or middle click and drag, that's going to pan left and right. And then W and S is going to move forward and backwards. And then A and D is going to rotate left and right. And then you have Shift to move down and Spacebar to move up. In addition to that, if you look over on the right-hand side, you might see something that says block options or something. But if you collapse all of these little extra menus, one of the bottom ones is the setting menu. And you can change a few different things in this menu that you might want to play around with depending on how you like to work. So you can turn on and off the floor grid, for example. You can reset the camera if you end up in a really weird spot. You can change to a pointer lock mode that you can then control the sensitivity of your mouse and stuff. And then you can change the view distance. If you've got like a lot of blocks and it starts to slow the program down, you can change the view distance, and you can also change the move speed. And then there's some different settings for lighting, and you can also change your skylocks if you want. And then over here on the left-hand side, we obviously have all of the blocks to choose from. So just to demonstrate really fast, I'll just choose a random grass block. With this Add Blocks tool selected, you can just left-click anywhere on the grid, and that will place blocks down. You can switch to this Remove Blocks tool, and then left-click over blocks that you want to remove. The undo and redo buttons don't work, but the Control Z and Control Y do work. So if you press Control Z, it will undo, and Control Y will redo. Over here, you have some placement size options. So if I go back to add blocks and then I want to change my size, I can add like a 5x5 section of blocks instead. And that placement size tool also works for removing blocks. There's this ground tool. So if I click on the ground tool and then I click on one part of the grid and move to a different part of the grid, this is going to put a full flat area down of whatever block I have selected. So for right now, I've got grass selected. And you can see at the top, it tells you the size of the area that you're going to be adding. So right now, I'm going to add a 20 by 20 by 1 section. If I hit number 2, it's going to adjust the height up. And if I hit number 1, it's going to adjust the height back down. So once I have the section set up the way I want, I can just click again, and it'll place that cluster of blocks. Similarly, there is this wall tool, which works the same way, except that instead of making a giant area of blocks, it just makes a single line of blocks. So if I click over here and I drag across, I can make like a diagonal wall, for example, like that. And if you're ever unsure of what buttons to press while using some of these tools, you can just hover over the tool and it will give you instructions at the bottom. Up next, we have this Generate Terrain button. So I have this grass block selected still, and I'm going to hit that button, Generate Terrain. And this will allow you to have a randomized terrain based on some conditions that you set. So let's say I wanted to make a 50 by 50 area of grass, and I want the max height to be, let's say, 6. You can change how smooth or rough it is by dragging the slider. And then when I hit generate, you'll see that it places this section of blocks, but it varies in height. So instead of just doing one height, it's got these random variations in the terrain. There's some other tools here that we're not going to worry about right now. And then the final button I want to point out is this enter player mode. So if you hit this button all the way at the end, it's actually going to drop a character into the game that you can control the same way you do Hytopia. So WASD to move around, shift to sprint, and then spacebar to jump. And this is great for if you're trying to gauge the scale of what you're working on, or like jump distances for obbies and things. And then when you're done working with this player mode, you can just press the button and you'll go back out into the regular build mode. There's also the tab over here for models, which is how you can add different Hytopia models into your map. And then there's this section for components where you can drag in JSONs or Axiom files if you're a Minecraft builder and use them in your build, which we're not going to go over in this video. All right, and let's go ahead and start making our map. So obviously over here on the left, we have all these default Hytopia blocks. And it may be that everything you need for your map is already represented here with the blocks that we have. That's most likely not going to be the case, though. It might be that none of these blocks are going to work for what you're doing. It might be that only some of them are going to work, but you still have a few missing. But thankfully, we can actually upload our own textures here, or even use AI to generate textures that we can also use in our build. For me, I'm going to be doing a lot of this in this map because This is going to be set inside of a volcano. There aren't a lot of blocks here that are suitable for that. And also the blocks that are suitable for that don't quite have the look that I'm personally going for. But I don't want to spend the time right now. I'd rather get a really good layout first, and then I can start tweaking textures, because it's easier for me to see the textures and how they're working in like a larger format than it is when I'm just working like with a texture file. So because of that, similarly to what we did in the coding video, I'm going to need placeholder blocks that I can use to make this build that I'll change out later with different textures. And there's a couple really easy ways to do this. The first way we can do this is by downloading a default Hytopia block, renaming it, and then uploading it back in as a custom block. So let's say I want to use this andesite block as a placeholder block. All I have to do is click this block. I can expand the block options over here, and I can hit download. And that's downloaded that file for me. And you can see it downloaded as a zip file. So I'm just going to unzip this. And then when we open that up, we can see that this block has 6 different textures for it. I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to use this +Y. And I'm just going to name it VD for volcano dash lava dirt. And now that I have that new named file, I'm just going to drag it over here. And now I have it here as a custom block. So if you click this as a custom block, you can see the name that we just gave it is here. It gave it a block ID. And now we can use it in our game. The other way to get good placeholder textures into this builder is to just use this create texture button. And then you could technically draw one here if you wanted, but the easier way is to use the AI. So I said black and gray volcanic dirt with small glowing purple specks. And I'm going to hit generate. I'm going to let it know I'm a human being. And then over here it says it's generating. Okay, great. And now that I have this, I need to give it a name, because it's going to default to your prompt down here. So we're just going to give it a name that's called VD Purple Volcano Rock. I'm going to say add texture. And now I have that texture to use as well. So I hope that makes sense. You don't have to do this if you really like the Hytopia blocks as they are. But if you want to do any sort of custom blocks in your game, it's best to just make placeholder ones, use those in the build, and then change those texture files out later when you have a better idea of what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and make a bunch of placeholder blocks and then use the layout that I sketched on my iPad to build out my map. So our map is in pretty good shape now, and we're ready to go ahead and integrate it into our code. I'll probably spend some more time later tweaking things here and there aesthetically and adding models and things like that. But for now, we've got the structure done and we can go ahead and get it integrated. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to this cloud button at the bottom, and I'm going to click export. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder, and I'm going to find that zip file, and I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to hit extract all. And once it's extracted, you'll see that this folder contains a few things. We've got our map file. We also have a blocks folder, which has all of our textures in it. If we had added any models, all of those models would be downloaded into this models folder. And then if you have a custom skybox that you chose from the builder, your skyboxes will be in the skybox folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rename my map file to volcano-map, and I'm going to copy all of these folders in this file, and then I'm going to go to my assets folder of my project. So I'm in Hytopia Games volcano-assets, and inside of this folder I'm going to paste what I just copied by pressing Ctrl V. And when I do that, it's going to ask me if I want to replace any files with the same names. I'm going to obviously say yes. So now we have the map file and all the necessary blocks in our folder. So now if we open up Cursor, we can see that we have our new volcano-map.json file in here. And it has the same structure as the other map file that we looked at, but we can see we have every single block here listed in the file. So I'm going to go to my index.ts file. And in this file, you might remember that we're importing the world map from assets/map.json. So just to remind you where we left off in the last video, this is what our map currently looks like. And this is just the default map that you get when you first initialize a Hytopia project. So we are going to change this to be our new map file, which is our volcano-map.json file. So I'm going to change that right here. I'm going to say volcano, and you can see when I started typing it, it popped up right here. So I'm just going to click that, and I'm going to hit save. And when I do that, you'll see the map completely change out to the one that we just exported. All right, and here it is. So you can see everything is in the same exact places as it was in the other map. The only thing that's changed is the terrain. So we still have our 2 NPCs. We still have somewhere, looks like it's in there, we still have our block of lava showing up over here in the corner. And then you can see all of our checkpoints out here in the middle of the lava. So the first thing that we need to do to integrate our game code with the map is we need to get our checkpoints actually showing up in these checkpoint slots that I have around the map. So to do that, we need to get the coordinates of our checkpoints. There's 2 ways we could do this. We could go to the checkpoints in the actual game, and you can hit this little caret key, which is the key under your escape key. And when you hit that, it's going to pull up this side menu. And you can see in the top right, it gives you the player position, right? So my player is currently standing at 43.5, 5-ish, and 2.5, right? So I could run this course and get each of the coordinates like that, but what I think is the easier way is if you still have your map file open in the editor, and if you collapse all of these options on the side, in the bottom right, it tells you the preview position. So I can actually go down here and just scroll to this checkpoint that I was just at, and it's going to tell me the same thing. 4342 is the position of this block. So starting with this initial checkpoint here, we've got this block of 4. I'm going to want my checkpoint to be right in the middle of these. So we might have to do some tweaking once we see how they all lay out. But for now, this one is at 1540. So I'm going to go to my code. In my config files, you'll remember there's an Obby config. And inside the Obby config is these checkpoints. So I'm just going to change these coordinates to be the correct location. So this first one again, I'm just going to put these side by side. All right, so this first one is going to be 1540. I'm going to say 15, and I'm going to put it at like 7, 0, so that it can just make sure it spawns above and falls to the ground. And then this is 0. So that should be the positioning of all of the checkpoints. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file and let the server reload. So this one needs to move a full block over and a full block forward. So checkpoint 1, let's do this. Needs to do a full block over and back. Checkpoint 2 needs to move a half a block over and back. So we're going to do 0.5 over, 0.5 back. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, check these changes. So if you didn't know, if you press this / key underneath your backspace key, you can get into this free cam mode and fly around. All right, so that looks perfect now. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. 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 And good. Okay, all our checkpoints look good now. So the next thing I want to do is I want to move my NPCs to the correct places. So this guy starts the timed Obby mode. So I'm going to move him like over here in the corner, which let's go ahead and see where that's at while we're in here. So I'm going to move him over to 14, 6, -3. So we're putting him to 14, -3 for the timer. And then I want to move the skeleton guy to the back of this hallway, I think would be good. So -33 looks like 1, maybe. I'm going to spawn him like at 4 or so. 1. And then the other thing we need to change is the size of our lava block entity and its location. So back inside of my map, this is the chamber for the lava, and I need to put it right in the center of this. And this isn't going to be perfect. So this is a 20 by 20 chamber. So this is the center right here. So we've got -27.5 and -13.5. So -27.5 and -13.5. So that's where we need it to spawn. And then it's 20 by 20 chamber. So we need it to be 10 by 10.5 extents. And I'm not sure how tall the course is yet. I also think I need to move this down 1. Because if I look in here where it's currently at, it's interfering with this glass layer. So I need to move the lava entity itself just down 1. So it was at 1 before and I moved it to 0. And you'll notice that my chambers are empty in my map file. And that's because I actually wanted to recycle the code from my chambers from the original version of this game. It's really messy. But I didn't want to have to rebuild all these courses again. So I'm not really going to go over what I did. Just know that it's like a separate map file that's getting imported into the map with the chunk lattice. You can look that up in the dev docs if you're curious about that. But in my Lava Rising folder, I have this folder now for courses, and I have the practice course and the chamber course. And then in my game manager, I've got this function to initialize the courses. So I'm going to turn that back on now. And I'm going to hit save. Now that I've activated that course code that I talked about, you can see it now running inside of the chamber. And then if we go over to the practice chamber, you can see the same things running over here. All right, so let's check this out. Obviously, I'm not going to worry about the rotations right now because this isn't going to be the final model. So I'll fix that in the polish step. But we've got this guy in a decent spot. We moved this lava guy over here. And then I also have changed the size and the location of the lava block entity. So I'm going to start this lava rising mode. If I go in the chamber, it looks correct. Okay, good. And then we need to get it to stop at the correct place. So let's see. It needs to stop like here. So where is this? The height is like 37. All right, so we need the lava entity to stop at 37. But the block entities work with half extents. So the point that it's going to be referencing is the very center of the height. So if I make the half extent 37, and I make the y -37, and then I rise it to 0. So I'm going to change all these parameters and see if this works. Okay, so now I've changed the ending point of the lava, so let me run this again. Stop. Yes, okay, that's exactly where I want it to end. Okay, so the next thing that I need to set up is the location of the supercharge stations. So you may remember that in the lava rising config, I have the lava chamber bounds, which we're going to say y 37 is as high as we want to go there. So we've got the lava chamber bounds. We definitely need to spawn a lot more energy shards in the chamber. So I'm going to just like put a ton. 15 and like 10. So we've got more shards spawning now. All right, and now energy clusters. We need specific locations for our energy clusters. So let's see where we want to put some. All right, so I've been tweaking the location of all my energy clusters and supercharge stations. I think I have them right now. So I'm going to load it up. So I'm just going to fly around the chamber really fast. So you can see these random energy shards are spawned everywhere. We've got our supercharge stations, which are these stair models right now that are in their proper locations. And then we have our energy clusters, which are also spawned in their proper locations. So with this done, that's basically the last thing I needed to do to get my map integrated. So to recap, we have obviously changed out the map file, right? We moved the checkpoints to their proper locations in the map. We also moved the NPCs to their rough locations that we're going to have them. And we've changed the size of our lava entity to match our chamber dimensions and to get it to stop at the correct point. And then we changed the locations for all of our power-ups to make sure those are spawning in the correct places in the chamber as well. All that's really left now is the polish. So in the next video, we are going to talk about block textures, custom models, a little bit about game balance. We'll focus on making the UI a little bit nicer. We will probably add some like decorative models around the map, and we will change out our sounds. So a lot of tiny little tweaks left to do in this game, but we're getting really close. Thank you so much for watching as always. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Be sure to subscribe if you are not already, and if you do, I will see you in the next one.